All right, 10 thrash metal albums you missed is not a challenge. It is a list of things that I've curated that are thrash metal that were overlooked, underrated, or just sort of missed my radar in terms of what I wanted to review. Most of these I would have reviewed if they'd been sent to me, but I just happened to find them or purchase them and decided to talk about them. Uh, Now we're starting out with a band that I actually know pretty well. Their first record, I contacted them to release it on my label a couple years after it. That was a dumb idea, but anyway, they came out with a second record, and this one is more of a progressive psychedelic death thrash metal record. And I guess we could focus somewhere in the realm of Sadus, but also late 80s Brazilian thrash, and that's where they're from. They're from Brazil, and basically this record is all over the place. It's got some Brazilian music in there. It's got a lot of surprises that are just kind of off the wall. But they call it psychedelic insane death thrash metal, and I think that says it well enough. I don't need to say much more other than give it a chance. Let the whole thing play. Don't just jump off after a few songs, because they'll put you through the ringer to start. But the second half is worth it to see where they go with it. Now, it might look like Salva Campuzano, a Madrid, Spain-based thrash metal artist, is kind of on a tear here with two full-length albums releasing in the same year for this Project Warlamb. But the first one was a reissue of an older album from 2020 under the band's previous name, Storm Siege. Warlamb is the new name of the band, and this is the new Predator is the new record from the band, and he's done a great job with this one. I think that if you're a fan of mid-paced death thrash and the possibilities that brings about in terms of riffs, grooves, and sort of a congested feeling, this is a good example of what's possible with that. I'm a big fan of like the first two Canker records and Transmetal's kind of 1990, 92 to 98 era, before they kind of went the chasm a little bit. And you'll appreciate that style in this as well, in terms of it being a little bit groove, a little bit death metal, a little bit death thrash. But ultimately, it's a thrash death metal record if you want to line things up that way. There's a dissection cover at the end, which is always interesting. False Reality is the debut full-length album from Nemesis, a Houston, Texas-based thrash metal band, and one that features a fellow who was in Labyrinth, a band that I think split up and then reformed more recently. This band is very much in the style of, I would say, mid to late 80s Megadeth, the earliest stuff, where the vocals were and their melodies were a big part of that, but also the thrash was fast and speed metal in its movement. This is very much an old school thrash metal record proper. It focuses on its tunnel and it races down it with its riffs. This is a kind of a riff record. It's got some melodic value to it, but this is kind of a standard late 80s feeling thrash metal record, and one that reads as from people who are fans of that kind of thing. And it's something I appreciated in more so in its authenticity than its riffs. Most all of them work. I think the guitarist is fantastic in his arrangements, but it became a little bit repetitive by the second half, but still a great record. World Targets in Megadeth is the latest full-length album from Acid Force, a Slovakian thrash metal quartet who are heavily influenced by speed metal. I don't know if the title of this record is meant to suggest they are influenced by Megadeth, but if you like Peace Cells, there are several songs on here that kind of rock out in the way that they do on Peace Cells. Who's Buying? Um, Otherwise, this is just a very solid thrash metal record. This is a very strong standard for thrash metal in 2023 that is very traditional, but touches back on speed metal in an effective way that keeps the songwriting interesting, but they're still able to shred, gallop, and riff all over the place. So it's a solid record. It's not going to be any sort of disappointment to the classic thrash metal fan, and I spent quite a lot of time with it once I'd found it. It's Going to Be a Great Day is the debut full-length album from Radux. And this is a Finnish thrash metal quartet. These guys are still pretty young, and they're very much influenced by, I think, the more so the East Coast thrash metal aspect of the beginnings of thrash. So there's a lot of overkill in the cadence of the vocalist, although his voice is probably closer to like Katon from Hyrax. It's a little bit more high pitched. There's a little bit of whiplash in their previous record or their EP. Well, maybe a little bit less so here as they focus on more riffs, quick songs, uh, kind of a punkish touch to some of it, lots of energy, and just kind of a solid record. The rating is just low because I think that they could do better with a lot of small things. I think their artwork could be a lot sharper. I think their lyrics could be a little bit smarter. And I think it just didn't make me want to sit there and just listen to this record over and over, even though there's a lot of great riffs and the vocals are pretty cool. So interesting record, but I think they can do better in the future. Retching Necropolis is an EP from Anarchy, who are sort of a Vector influenced, but kind of all over the place progressive thrash metal duo from St. Louis, Missouri. And they're kind of weirdos, you know. Like their first LP came out in 2022, and they called it a Shakespearean thrash metal rock opera. Well, I mean, it sounded a little bit like Vector, but not completely. It was all over the place. And this EP is similarly all over the place. I would say I'm getting like a very strong Mekong Delta kind of vibe from this band and the way they think. But there's also a little bit of Ex Mortis in there in terms of they like to shred a bit. So that's interesting enough. They fit in an acid bath cover on this EP. I hope they don't include that on the album because it sucks. But I like that they tried to do that, and it shows that they're trying something different with the melodic side of the band. It sort of sounds a little bit like a depressive age song, the German band, and it just doesn't really work. But interesting EP. I kind of want to see where this band goes. Some only modern, the surface of skin. They are man, his blood is brain. It's flesh to cradles and after within. To fulfill the goal of molecular domain. For the city in the judgment made. Feeling experience. Forced Equal is the latest full-length album from Tankist, an Estonian thrash metal quartet who we haven't heard from since 2017's Unhuman. They actually hit this same column back in 2017 because I thought their first record was pretty cool. They were kind of getting there with it, with a semi-technical and sort of a kind of traditional but not take on things. And they've really amped up everything they do on this very dramatic and I would say modern thrash metal record. I don't mean that it's glossy or that it's not underground thrash metal anymore. It's more that they're just doing something I haven't quite heard a lot of before. This is something different. It's kind of original in some ways. It seems they're taking influence from extreme metal and other places, and it's kind of paying off with a pretty interesting record. It takes a while for this thing to get going. There's a lot of growling and kind of strange vocal play at the start of the record. And that's kind of the hurdle to get over before you get to the kind of the body of the record, which has a lot to say, and it's just a solid thrash metal record that deserves maybe a more patient chance given to it. Now, I wasn't a huge fan of Post-Necrotic Human. This is the latest Demolizer record, and I think this band is very much a neo-thrash band. It's a modern form of thrash metal where the rhythms are very congested and blitzkrieg speed, and there's a lot of just outright screaming throughout the entire record. It's very much the exaggeration of thrash and speed metal that we've gotten beyond the birth of Municipal Waste and all that. It's a bit much, but it's really good for like 3 songs, and then I put it down and I can pick it up for 3 more a little bit later. It's a little bit pushing it to 10 all the time. I like to see what they could do with songwriting. They're obviously very skilled and have the right idea about thrash metal, but again, it's just they hit it up to 10 and it just stays at 10 the whole time, and that's not what thrash metal is about.
Where it was once dry as a desert, it has now become a city of blood. As definition became blurred, the golden senses are mud.
Gritos de Inocentes is the latest full-length album from Quilpue, Chile, thrash metal group Bunker, and they actually formed way back in the 80s. They weren't active between 94 and 2016 as far as I know, and they generally have kept a sound that definitely feels like a band that was around and kind of learned their muscle memory in the 90s, in the early 90s. If you're a fan of Exodus and Testament, I think that is the best sort of gauge as to what they do, but they have a little bit of a darker take on it sometimes. They're more focused on groove than they are on just riff after riff. That's not quite my style, but it was a pretty solid record overall. So I really liked this very short album from Concrete, High Evolution, and I guess I would say this sounds a lot like German thrash metal, and this Hungarian band haven't really put out a record for it's been about 12 years now, and their style is still very much in what I would consider like Mortal Agony or Extreme Aggression, late 80s German thrash metal with a slightly technical focus, but is just brutally hammered out. This is very straightforward, hardcore-ish stuff, and if you're a fan of Erosion, like I mentioned, you'll get that feeling from this right away. Maybe it's more on the hardcore side, not exactly my taste, but it's still a pretty strong record. It makes a good, blunt and aggressive first impression that a lot of people will appreciate.
Sleeping in and out of reality, not grasping your resistance, nothing to fear, accepting the green, just live fast. First off.